So yesterday was a little bit of a marathon day at the State House, talking to the committee. What were your main takeaways now that you've had about a day to kind of debrief in your mind and think a little bit about everything that was asked of you and everything that you were able to share?
Yeah, I think, it was a marathon day, but, I think there were underlying themes from the committee members that were well-intended. Obviously, anytime that there's a tragedy in the Department of Corrections in one of our prisons, we expect to have questions asked of us. We should have questions asked of us, and we should be able to provide responses like I provided yesterday. And so I think, it's an opportunity for me to engage with legislators differently than we typically do. And I think there were some key points, key pieces of information that I was able to get across. They were able to get across as well. And, my hope is that we're going to have productive meetings that come out of that where we can sit down and actually drill down into some of the more specifics. And so it was a long day, and there were certainly some things said that I think probably were unnecessary, but it's just par for the course. And I think my focus is really looking out towards the progress we're going to make, the collaboration that can come from it, and hopefully at the end of the day it's a good outcome for everybody.
Yeah, there were some remarks and some testifying that happened where they were questioning really this whole idea of reimagining corrections. And when you kind of look at that from a larger lens, what do you have to say to someone who thinks that overall this entire philosophy needs to go away? What is, you gave your response yesterday, obviously, but now looking at it a day later, what is your response to anyone who would just say, scrap this whole entire thing?
It's interesting because every aspect of our lives evolves over time. Every aspect of business evolves, the community, us as individuals, right? But it seems like anytime we're talking about a prison system that is rooted in centuries of stagnation and traditional practices, whenever we talk about or try to evolve it with the times and bring it into modern times, we receive this level of resistance and pushback. And so yes, our vision is to reimagine corrections. I explained that very thoroughly yesterday and what it means and why it's important for staff to have that vision and to really buy into it. Unfortunately, we're always going to have naysayers and people who want pure punishment, pure lockdown, and not try to rehabilitate, not worry about what happens when people release into our communities. And again, I take that for what it is. It just seems to be what comes with corrections. But I do think there's enough people that understand the importance of evolving with the times and better using what we know about how we handle individuals, how we engage with them, how we rehabilitate them, and most importantly for me, how we prepare them to re-enter into our communities.
Yeah. Yesterday there was a lot of conversation of, statistics and the fact that the last couple of years, there's been a lot of assaults this year, kind of seeing a spike in those assaults. What is your message to people about what maybe this is behind those statistics that people might need to understand?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, numbers can be portrayed in any way. And so that's why it was important for me, I asked a lot of questions yesterday about where those numbers come from. And really my push is to sit down and dissect those numbers so we all have a good understanding of what was put in front of us yesterday. But the other thing that's important is there's so much complexity inside of a prison, right? And when we look over the last 5 years of things that have happened, I referenced yesterday the pandemic and the impact that that's had, right? I also referenced security protocols that have evolved over time. I referenced illicit drugs and the ways that they're coming into our prison system different than we've ever seen in the past, and a whole host of other factors. What I wanted to paint yesterday related to those numbers and all these other topics is there's so much complexity that people really have to take time to understand. It doesn't do any good to come in, make accusations, rely on rhetoric and all these other things. It's better to spend our time sitting down and really unpacking what's factual, understanding those dynamics, and then putting some solutions to those dynamics. And what I really want the committee to know, what I communicated to them a lot yesterday, is we're doing everything within our power to fix these issues. We understand them, our neighboring states understand them, we're taking strategies and ideas and solutions that are working in other places, and we're implementing them here. It's going to take time, right? We came out of a 3-year period of a full-scale lockdown due to a pandemic, and then we introduced all of these new dynamics across our communities and in our prisons. And guess what? Now we're dealing with them, and we're having to put solutions in place, right? Does that excuse things that happen? No, but it gives context to them, and it gives us a platform to really build solutions to. And that's what I hope people understand.
Yeah. A lot of critics want to focus in on Wassenaar and what happened with him. Is there any room for a lessons learned conversation? And is there anything that you've thought of that, hey, you know, maybe whatever you could maybe share, maybe we do this differently? Or do you stand by the fact that this was handled in the best way we knew how at that time?
Yeah, there's a number of different things that are lessons learned, things that we've put in place following that incident and several other incidents that have happened. You know, every single one of them has its own specifics and nuances and things that we learn from. But following the Wassenaar incident, we implemented a whole new approach to close custody management that we still are operating within today. We implemented a new count procedure to start the day and to end the day. We implemented a new escort procedure. We implemented a new operational clock. Right? We implemented different staffing ratios at different times of the day. We changed up property. Like, we did all of these things, not to mention, you know, the body-worn cameras and other things that we've talked about. All of those things combined came from things that we learned from either the Wassenaar situation or any of these other unfortunate situations. We take every one of those opportunities as a learning moment, right? And it might be changing policy, it might just be changing practices, and it might be going and bringing in new technology resources. And so that's what we're doing, and every time we have a bad situation, it's our responsibility to learn from it and put new solutions in place.
Yeah, and you said you've done that. So let's talk a little bit about the body-worn cameras, because we got a first-hand look at those, but I haven't gotten to specifically talk about them with you. Some of the statistics that we heard down there in Iman were very impressive about how even just a few weeks and a couple months into this implementation, you're seeing some impressive statistics. One of those that really jumped out to me was the reduction in use of force. What do you want people to know about that? Because critics might look at that statistic and say, oh, so, you know, what does that say about what these officers and, you know, these guards were doing before, and now they feel this? What would you say the statistics tell you about your policies and also about the people who are maybe learning from them?
Yeah, the body-worn cameras are a blessing, and what the statistics tell us right out of the gates is that they're having a positive impact inside of our prisons. People will make all kinds of claims and draw their own, you know, thoughts around what it means previous. What I focus in on is what is happening today, and what we know today is that that body-worn camera on the officer is changing behavior, whether that's the behavior of the staff member or the behavior of the inmate or both, or people around. To me, doesn't matter. To me, what I'm focused on is a safer dynamic in that moment, and that's what those body-worn cameras are providing. And then, you know what, if we have to go back and look and see what happened and why it happened, it also gives us a first-hand look at that situation with audio that we've never had access to before, and so we can bring a level of accountability, coaching, mentoring, and intervention that we've never had the opportunity to do before.
Yeah. Do you feel, you're a pretty positive guy, it seems like, do you feel though that at some point it's hard to win right now with the critics? I mean, when you sit and have to testify in front of all of these people, and then you have people saying that this is not going to help, this isn't going to help, you know, where do you stand on trying to keep that positive? You kind of have no choice, right?
Yeah, I can't win right now, right? That's the reality. But even before now, like, when you come into a position like this, when you come into an agency with the reputation that we have here and the history that we have here, I knew I was walking into a no-win situation. I make one decision and it pleases one group of people. I make that same decision and it angers a different group of people. It is always going to be that way. Every decision that I make is going to have positive and negative people, right? So I approach it to just be methodical and stay the course. We set out a vision to reimagine this agency, and what that means is we set out a vision to really dig into reconceptualizing what good corrections looks like. What do we know? What can we learn? And how can we implement it here? That's the course we're on. I'm going to have naysayers along the way. Every time there's a blip in the radar, somebody's going to call me out. Most often it's the same people calling me out every single time. It's my responsibility to keep the agency on the course we're on, because that's how we're going to see long-term outcomes. If I change course every time somebody questions something that I do, we'll just spin ourselves in circles all day long. And I owe it to the staff, and I owe it to the agency, and I owe it to our communities to stay on the course that we're on.
Yeah. Just to follow up from that, hearing some of the testimony from former wardens, people that have been inside the prison, I think sometimes those type of testimonies may stick with people a little bit more than the advocates who are outside of the walls. What is your response to hearing from people who have worked with you and then left? We all know there are disgruntled employees that happen in every work setting, but to hear that at a state house level and know that they felt compelled to do that, what's your response to them showing up and testifying like that?
They're exercising their right to be there, right, and they'll allow their voice to be heard. I think it's interesting when you have those same people prior to their departure sitting in the rooms telling you how great things are, telling you how much they appreciate the changes that are coming, the changes that we're implementing, how on board they are, how they want to excel in new leadership roles, and saying all of these things when they're in the role. And then once they leave the role, for individual reasons that I'm not going to talk about publicly, they're choosing not to share publicly, right? That is what it is, I guess. If that's the course they want to take after they leave the agency, let them do it. I'm focused on our leadership team that we have now, which is the best leadership team this agency's ever seen, and they're going to take us forward.
So let's talk next steps. Hopefully I catch up with you again before the end of the calendar year, but it is, almost September. So what can people expect from the Department of Corrections the rest of 2025? And what are the next steps? As you mentioned, meetings. I believe there's going to be a report coming out. What can you tell us about what's coming next?
There's a lot coming next, and again, things will be praised and things will be criticized. But first and foremost, we're staying on the path that we're on, right? We have a roadmap for calendar year 2025, just like we have for the last 2 years. We're going to stay that course. We're going to stay true to our 4 goals. We're going to support staff every chance that we get, and we're going to comply with things like our federal court injunction while interjecting all of these new initiatives to make our correctional environment safer and better. But more importantly, we're going to hopefully collaborate with the legislature in a productive fashion. We're going to sit down and talk about what do we really need as an agency as we go forward. Let's not criticize individuals, right? Let's not seek headlines. Let's sit down and problem solve what we really need to do to support the staff, to give the staff the environment they should work in, right, in order to get better outcomes. That's what I'm really looking forward to as we head into 26. And then people can expect to see a 2026 roadmap that builds upon all of our progress thus far, but most importantly, keeps us on the path that we're on.
Final question, and then I'll open it up if there's anything else. But I'd like to ask, I think I asked the same thing last time, just for anyone who has a loved one within the correction system, really feels, impassioned about prison reform and prisoners' rights. What is your message to them about, you've kind of made it clear that we're on the right path, but what is your message to them if they have any fears or any concerns seeing some of the things that have happened?
Yeah, my message to them really remains the same. Safety, security, and health are critically important to us for both our staff and the population. And anytime there's a concern, anytime there's an issue that's brought forward, we look into it, we do everything we can to resolve it, right? And so I hope that anybody who has those concerns brings them to me, brings them to this agency, because we will look into them, we will ensure that we hold ourselves accountable, and we put a solution in place. I don't want anybody going to sleep at night feeling unsafe or working in a prison environment feeling unsafe. And I hope they all know that they can reach out to me to get some level of engagement and follow-up and solution to it.
Anything else?
The final piece I would say is I want people to really understand how much hard work goes into running our prisons every single day. It is so easy for people to Monday morning quarterback things that happen across the state with 35,000 individuals incarcerated, 9,000 plus staff members, right? Contracted individuals working in our prisons, like all of those things, all of those human dynamics, all of the other dynamics that are at play, yet all of those people show up every single day to be public servants, to keep things safe, to keep things secure, and to focus on rehabilitating. And so I want people to just understand how much work goes into that and how much appreciation we should have for our correctional officers and our correctional staff, because they go completely unnoticed until something bad happens. And then they're put out in the front of everybody, right? But day in and day out, they do a heck of a job for the state of Arizona, and people really need to appreciate that.
Thank you.